The play on the field, the courts, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and promoters who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go behind the game with Patrick Klinger and Bill Robertson. Welcome to Behind the Game. I'm Patrick Klinger. My regular co-host, Bill Robertson, is not able to join me today. He's tending to his duties as Commissioner of the Western Collegiate Hockey Association, so I'm flying solo. This is the first show that we've been able to do in a few months, because it's been a few months since the coronavirus really shut down the world. But I cannot think of a better guest to get us started again than the one that we have today. She's a highly respected, award-winning sports reporter and broadcaster who's known for her coverage of the Olympics and the NFL on NBC Sunday Night Football. She's also reported on the NBA, the WNBA, college football, college basketball, and hosted radio programs. I am privileged to welcome to Behind the Game, Michele Tafoya. Michele, welcome.
Hey there. Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
No, it's a pleasure. Now, as we tape this show, Michele, here in early June, protests sparked by the killing of George Floyd right here in Minnesota have spread throughout the country, really throughout the world.
Yeah.
If you take off your sports cap for a moment, as a parent, how do you talk to your kids about what happened and the unrest that's followed?
Well, the event itself, the George Floyd event, and the fact that it was done on video is really difficult to explain because it's so senseless and cruel. And it's still hard for me to believe that it happened, quite frankly. Even though I know that it did, it's unfathomable to think of how someone could be possessed to do that to another human. But you can't avoid your kids seeing it, at least not at my kids' age. They're young, kind of tweeners, teenagers, and they've all got social media and they've got access to the internet. And so they're seeing it. They know it's wrong. We try to differentiate for them what peaceful protest is versus violent protest. And we ask them to really step back and try to put themselves in the position of people who feel victimized. It's just been so painful to watch. And I think, frankly, my kids they understand it, they get it, but it's too hard for them to fully grasp the magnitude of it.
Sports, of course, is not immune from issues regarding race. Just a couple of days ago, as a matter of fact, Drew Brees made some comments that were viewed by some black athletes as insensitive at best, racist at worst. Do you think when athletes speak up and they face this kind of backlash and criticism, does that prevent them from wanting to speak up in the future? Obviously, Colin Kaepernick is a shining example of somebody who's paid a huge price for taking a stand.
Yeah, he has. And certainly that hasn't changed his stance. He never changed what he believed in and never changed his actions. I think what happened to Drew Brees is difficult. I don't think Drew is racist. I think Drew is a really giving, generous guy, not only with his time and money, just in his heart. So I know this has been really troubling for him. I guess, and this pains me to say, but you have to choose your moments and you have to be sensitive to this moment. It's huge. And yes, we have freedom of speech in this country, but so he had that freedom of speech. I think, I don't think he intended it to sound the way that it sounded to people. I really don't. But his teammates, in particular Malcolm Jenkins, have been really outspoken as to how it affected them. And so, yeah, I hope the conversation gets deeper and more face to face. I tell you, I get on Twitter and I don't even want to be there. It's really tough. And so my hope is that team can come together and find a way to understand each other fully.
I saw a post the other day that said maybe 2020 is not a year that we want to do over. Maybe this is the year that we needed to have to really change the way that things had been going. As painful as it's been.
It's not a bad point. I mean, people have talked about how the COVID and the shutdown have brought their families closer, or it has taught them to reestablish their not necessarily their values, but the kinds of things they want to do when they have the time to do them. So often in our lives, we've said, I wish I could read more. I just don't have the time. Well, you've had nothing but time, most of us. Unfortunately, some people have been working like crazy during this whole thing, and thank God for every one of them. Yeah. And I praise them, and I am grateful for those of us that were told to do our part, to sit still, stay in. I found I was reading more, listening to Audible, writing more, writing in a diary, writing thank you letters to people that I love, thanking them for their friendship or whatever impact they had on my life, and just really thinking more and really spending good quality time with my family. And so that is the silver lining, if you will, the blessing in disguise. And then this recent slew of events, yeah, I mean, this conversation has to be had. I just want it to happen civilly. I just want it to include everyone. I don't want anyone to feel that their opinions don't matter. So it's really a soul searching time.
It is. One prominent television host said to LeBron James a while back, keep your political comments to yourself, shut up and dribble.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is that teams and leagues take a stand and use their platforms, their very high profile platforms, to try to make a difference?
I think I applaud it. I think the NBA has done a really good job. I think the NFL can do a better job. Absolutely. Those leagues have made changes in other ways. Breast Cancer Awareness Month, or just Cancer Awareness Month. The Latino celebrations that they have. And they have been working on these social justice campaigns. I think the biggest message we need to send is that everyone, no matter their skin color, has the strength and power and courage within them, if they dig deep, to be who they want to be, to love everyone else, to listen, to give, to support. And I've seen great examples of it. When Khalil Mack was still in Oakland, he and David Carr, I always forget which Carr is throwing the football in Oakland, but we're best buddies. And they liked the fact that their friendship served as an example. So yes, I feel like these leagues have such an enormous platform that any way you can use it for good, anytime you can, you should.
And you're not shy about sharing your opinions, which is fantastic. Wait, has NBC ever questioned any of your comments or your social media posts?
I think there was a time a while ago when I had the letters NBC in my Twitter handle, and I was out campaigning at a state fair with a friend of mine for a candidate for office, and NBC was asked, she's got NBC in her Twitter handle and she's posting these pages. Do you endorse that? So I got the phone call of, hey, take NBC out of your Twitter handle. You can, but they've been really supportive about me speaking about the things that are important to me. And I love that about the company I work for. You know, I don't think I've really ever said anything too controversial. If I have, I've learned from it. And I, you know, my hope is always to offer courage, which is seemingly, I don't know, it's not where it should be as the courage level, you know, in everybody, in each individual person. I want people to feel strong. I want them to feel supported. I want them to feel like their mind is what they need to listen to, not the Twitterverse. Even though I use Twitter to promote some of these messages, I'm a huge believer in stoicism, and that stoicism is about courage. It's about temperance. It's about justice. And so, you know, I don't think any of those things is controversial. I think we need to remind people that they can access that grit inside them.
You know, the other crisis that we're dealing with is obviously COVID-19, as you referenced earlier. That's had a huge impact on your profession.
Mm.
How much have you missed the games?
A lot. Sometimes when we're sitting around as a family, we're going, wouldn't it be so great to have baseball on in the background right now? Because, you know, we live in Minnesota. We love the Twins. I've missed my kids' games more than anything. You know, I know a lot of people have said it, but it's really amazing that kids can't get out and play baseball. And I think this weekend, actually, my son has his first practice, but we've missed all the spring ball. My daughter can't play soccer. But yes, we were supposed to be off to the Olympic Games. I was supposed to cover the National Swimming Championships that create the Olympic team, and then go on with them to the Philippines for their training, or Singapore maybe, for their training session, and then off to Japan. And so that all changed. There are still a lot of questions about football. How's it going to look? When's it going to start?
Mm-hmm.
Can it start? And I think all the answers to those questions have been all over the board. We just don't know yet. But I sure hope we can bring it back.
If you are a betting person, do you think we'll see the NFL playing in September?
I think we'll see the NFL have a season. When it starts is, you know, anybody's best guess. I think we're all preparing. I'm preparing as though we're starting the season on time. And then we just wait and see. You know, the fascinating thing about these protests is you've had these masses of humanity not social distancing. And if those major cities that have had these protests don't see spikes in COVID, I think that's kind of an interesting little case study of, can we be together wearing masks or whatever, but that crammed together as Americans, can we do it and not add to the risk? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, you know, sports is beginning to restart, which is great. And we're going to see the PGA Tour, I think, playing next weekend. NASCAR has been running without fans. NBA announced just in the last day, I think, a plan to return. The NHL is still a little bit dicey. I know they're working on it. Perhaps here in Minnesota might be a hub for those games. But if the NFL does return in the fall, and there are no fans in the stands, how does that change the vibe for you of doing a sideline interview? You know, when typically there are 70, 80,000 people in the stands, and now there's nobody.
Yeah, it's going to be different. It's going to be odd. Here's an advantage would be that I might be able to hear and characterize the benches a little bit better, you know? I think the halftime interviews with the coaches, we don't do those on camera. We do them off camera deliberately, so we feel we get to report more succinctly what each coach is talking about. But, am I going to have to do those like this, with the microphone at a distance post game? We're talking about, how do we do the post game interviews if we're still having to social distance? Those things come to mind. If there are no fans in the stands, it certainly does change the vibe of the game. But I think it would be fascinating.
Yeah.
And I'd rather do a game. I'd rather have the NFL season with no fans than not have the NFL season,
Yeah, we've learned to adapt to not having sports. However, I think once you get to the NFL season, we cherish those Sunday afternoons and watching our favorite team. And I think that's when the tide would really turn. If we're not playing football in the fall, I think America would be pretty upset.
I agree. We have discovered through television ratings and a number of other things that the NFL is the favorite sport among Americans, most Americans. It's the most popular. People want to watch it. It's the perfect television game, perfect for television. And as we reach September and the weather starts to change and we're still not allowed to go outside, oh dear God, give us football, give us something to watch. Give us something to cheer for. Give us something to unite about. I think that's why you asked me if I'm a betting person. My gut tells me we'll have it in some way, shape, or form. Just don't know what that is, but
Michele, you've made the big time when you're portrayed on Saturday Night Live. Back in 2016, Cecily Strong played you on SNL. How did that feel? And do you think she did a good job?
What was amazing to me, absolutely amazing, was that they duplicated the bracelet I was wearing, the jacket. It was astonishing. But then I later visited one of the costume rooms at NBC in New York, and you can see that they're prepared for everything. Her role was very small. I thought it was really funny that the whole injury report with the guys whose legs were, they spelled my name wrong, which miffed me a little bit. They put 2 L's in it instead of 1. But other than that, I do use a picture of it on my Twitter page not because I think I'm any big deal, because I don't. I think Al and Chris were the stars of that bit, and the coach who was being interviewed was the star of that bit. But because it's kind of cool. But I don't feel like I've truly made the big time. I think our show is what's big time. I really do.
Female sportscasting pioneer Phyllis George passed away about a month ago, a little less than a month ago. What impact did she have on your career as a woman in an industry that's historically been dominated by men?
Someone had to be first, and Phyllis George was first. And I remember my dad pointing it out to me. I was pretty young. I think I was about 10 years old. But football was always on in our house. And that pregame show, the NFL Today, was always on in our house. And when it happened, it was a big deal. When Phyllis George came on, it was a big deal. And so that was my first notion. However seriously it hit me, it at least it was my first example of women becoming integrated into these broadcasts. I really wish I could have met her, because I would have thanked her. It was not easy to be the first. It was not easy for her to walk through that door. Heck, I wasn't the first. I wasn't even the 5th, but I know the scrutiny you get. I know the challenges you face. I signed up for it. I wanted it all and survived it, fortunately. But to be the first, to receive the kind of mail she received, to receive the kind of criticism she received and endure, speaks so much to her character. And I wish I could have met her, because I would have thanked her for that.
Well, you must know that you're inspiring thousands and thousands of young ladies, girls, to follow in your footsteps.
that's really hard for me to imagine. If, being an example or a role model, I never intended to be that. If I am, I hope I'm doing it right. Um, I the good news, I think, is that having been in this business for 25 years now plus, I think that that whole idea of women in a men's world, it's still there, but it's not as big a deal anymore. It's like almost, I don't even like talking about this idea. When people ask me what's it like being a woman in a man's world, I say, no, no, no. I'm just a professional journalist in the professional world. And every woman should look at that, whatever they go into, women who go into the military, women who go into, I don't care what your field is, just be a professional, really work really, really hard at what you want to do. And you might have to endure some stuff, but be gritty, believe in yourself, and go do it. And that's how I've always viewed it, and that's how I'm going to continue to do it.
That's great advice. As a growing girl growing up in Manhattan Beach, California, what prompted you to want to pursue a career in broadcasting?
I think when I was really young, I wanted to be the next Meryl Streep. When you grow up in California and the southern part where Hollywood is king, you kind of think about those things. I did a lot of plays and acting all the way through college. Did a lot of speaking, which I loved. And I kind of just knew I wanted to go into broadcasting in some way, shape, or form. And I did. I dabbled in radio internships and that kind of thing, television production, but it was just pulling at me. You want to be on the other side of the camera. You want to be the one speaking, that's what you want to be doing. Why aren't you pursuing that? And at the time, I was just a massive sports fan. I got to see Showtime with the Lakers in LA. I was raised a 49er fan through all the lean years and then through all the fabulous years. I saw Nolan Ryan pitch a no-hitter against the Minnesota Twins in Los Angeles, out in California when he was with the Angels. It was just pulling at me. And I saw some people doing it, Leslie Visser, Hannah Storm, Robin Roberts, and I said, I can do this. And I had my share of growing pains, let me tell you. It's harder than it looks. It is harder than it looks, all of it. And so, I just kind of followed my gut and my heart.
You've covered virtually every major sport. Is there one event, one sport that you still haven't covered yet that you hope to?
I've talked about wanting to do play-by-play on an NBA game. I would like to do that. But I have been so fortunate. I mean, like you said, I've done 4 Olympic Games. I'm about to do my 5th. I've done Super Bowls. I've done Final Fours. I've done college football national championships. I've never covered hockey. I've never done it. And I've done, the only baseball I've really done was AAA when I was working in Charlotte, and then the College World Series. So I tell you, I've seen a lot and done a lot. And I don't feel really like there is any box that's unchecked. I mean, I think the dream would be to host an Olympic Games, but there are like 3 people on the planet who get to do that, And right now it's Mike Tirico's turn, and he stepped in for Bob Costas. And so that's not going to happen. I got to be realistic about that. Some things you just have to be realistic about. And people have asked me, do you want to go into the booth in the NFL? Do you want to do play-by-play? Well, I work with the greatest play-by-play announcer of all time in Al Michaels. I will never live up to Al Michaels, and therefore I don't want to try. Because if I can't be the best at something, I kind of don't want to do it. So I'm just trying to be the best sideline reporter I can be, and I am blessed. I've had a really fortunate career.
Well, you You were the first woman to do play-by-play in an NCAA men's basketball game. I know the
Not by
story behind it,
choice
which
either.
is
Not by choice.
which is a great story, by the way.
Yeah.
But having been in the booth and doing play-by-play, you really don't have a desire to do more of that?
Well, like I said, basketball I love because I've watched it my whole entire life. My brother was a great high school basketball player, and so I've watched and played basketball from the time I could walk. And I love that sport, and it's a game. And I did play-by-play in the WNBA. I did a college basketball, women's and men's. I've done all that play-by-play, and I loved it. But the final frontier in that one for me is sort of the NBA or the Olympics. But you have to understand at a certain point when there are really good people already in those roles. Why would anyone suddenly go, you know what? Yeah, let's take Mike Breen out of there and put in Michele Tafoya. So there's a lot of timing that takes place in this landscape, in this profession. And so, maybe I'll do it, but I'll tell you what, if it takes me away from watching my kid play baseball or my daughter play soccer, right? I don't think so.
You've also hosted a couple of daily radio programs. Did you enjoy that experience?
Loved it. And love it. And currently talking about a podcast I do with NBC and then some other channels. As you can see, I love to talk. And I have a lot to say. And that's the irony of all of this is when you're on the sidelines doing a game, your hits are like 20 to 30 to 45 seconds if you're lucky, Now, the perk is you get to interview Malcolm Butler after he intercepts Russell Wilson on the goal line after the Super Bowl. There are some great moments you get to be a part of. Brett Favre beating the Packers at the Metrodome. That was one of the best ever. So those are the moments you kind of live for, or when news breaks out, when a major story develops at a game. But I still have so much more I'd like to discuss with so many different audiences. And so, I'm looking at that for the future.
That's terrific. Michele, we're out of time. I could go on all afternoon. I can't thank you enough for joining us today. One last question.
Pleasure. Yeah.
Are you ready for some football?
Are you ready for some football? I am ready for some football. I am, Patrick. Let's get going. I hope it happens.
Me too. Again, Michele, thank you so very much for joining Behind the Game today.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for watching Behind the Game.